are you guys going to want to return to something like questions like this, or should we just do the questions that were in our story or the questions that we came up with for each other today?
We could do one of these for all of us, because I just looked here. What profession did I want to have when I was a kid? It feels like maybe a good question for all of us to go through, because this is like a professionally related podcast.
We could do this one. Do we have maybe we can do like what you wanted to do as a kid, you thought you will be wanting to do when you were a kid, and if not your profession, what else would you do? I mean, because I wanted to be an architect and it's just so boring.
I feel like a lot of designers maybe had like I wanted to be an architect early on and then changed to design.
I can't think of what I wanted to be when I was a kid.
Kid Kate was like, screw that. I don't dream of labor.
I guess so. Like I wanted to be a fairy. How little are we talking? I want to ask each other one from the New York Times list. I'll send that to you guys too.
Okay.
But we don't have to ask like the pour out your soul to me questions. We can pick something that's like medium.
We're not going to make each other cry?
We can make each other cry. I'm a big fan of big vulnerability. Okay. So today is a relatively laid-back episode. It is just Margaret and Ginger and I on the podcast. And we decided to have this episode today because we've been around for a whole year. Yeah, I mean, I want to hear from both of you guys about what it feels like to have done this for a year, but I feel super excited. And I know that in the first couple months, we didn't even know what it would be like to interview somebody, let alone have the consistency of interviewing people. Of course, we reflected on this a little bit in January as well, but I think just more and more as the months have gone on, it's become more of a flow. You know, we operate pretty well as a team just to like consistently be reaching out to people and figure out who we want to talk to and figure out more topics we want to cover. And it's felt pretty seamless. You know, I think that we've had a lot of really ongoing nice interactions with guests and really just getting like blown away by person after person that just exceeds our expectations about what it's going to be like to talk to them and learn from them. And lastly, just, you know, really feel like the community that is reaching out to us and telling us that they're excited about it or that they're sharing it with each other or new people has also been, yeah, I don't want to say it exceeds my expectations because that's of course what we hoped this would be for, but I think has still just been really fulfilling to see that it is mattering to people. So grateful for all of the positive feedback, grateful for the, you know, constructive feedback, and excited to be doing this and to keep growing.
Yeah, and invite more feedback. Good and bad, all of it.
But also we don't ask enough questions and not as often as we could. We always get super excited when we get messages and we start talking to someone. And then we thought that this is just a small percentage of people who reaches out by themselves, and we could have so much more if we were asking about it more often, which we will try to do.
Yes, our bad. More questions for listeners soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a good way to talk about our community itself. We will talk maybe more about what we intend to do this year, but I think one of the main drivers of anything that we do in the next couple months is basically just that we've heard from you all that you really want to know each other more and to have more of like a space and community and way to be interacting with the other people that listen or to be involved with us. And so, yeah, we want to start having some more engaging social media, and we are considering how we might grow our team or have events or spaces for y'all to interact. And first, we just need to sort of figure out where our audience all is, like how much of them would even benefit from an in-person event or how much we should just be doing virtual things. and then the level of engagement that everybody wants to have, so that we know how to connect you all and like what would be fun and comfortable for you. Fun thing that we did though is ask you all some questions in our stories about your experience listening to podcasts this year. We did think it would be a fun little thing in this episode to share some of the responses, some of our like favorite responses that we got to those questions. You two want to just sort of take turns sharing some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, sure. The first question's kind of a big one about best thing that happened in careers for people. Big theme of entrepreneurship, quitting your job, doing your own thing, because in-house is boring, because in-house is low pay, being independent is busy, exciting. That was a huge theme.
Yeah, it's true. There was a lot of turnover and transition for this question, right? It was like, and I echo this sentiment, quit my job.
Woo-hoo.
You quit your job to become a fairy. You just told us.
Yeah, I did. That's true. And it's working. I've been spending more time in the woods than in my house, so I think I'm on track. Another question we asked everybody was, yeah, just in the vein like how we want to be building this community. Did you all deepen or form new relationships with other women in your field? And we had some straight up yes and some straight up not yet. But then also somebody who moved and they've been meeting with a lot of other women as mentors and mentees, which is very cool. I hope that seeing something about this community and the other like women in design events and spaces was a motivator in encouraging that person to consider reaching out to other women.
Mm-hmm. We also asked what episodes were influential, and we heard that people were sharing the Britney's episode, and also the Angela episode was going back and forth between people because of all the information about like getting your career on the right track. Someone commented very, very well that we always complain in industrial design that we don't know how to navigate our career, because a lot of it is it's very different than school, and you get a job and the first job sometimes puts you in the category you want to work on, and then you just keep doing it. And to really think about navigating the creative career, I think Angela gave a good pep talk to everyone who's like wondering.
Yeah, it must have been good timing with so many people who said they quit their job.
Seriously, I still feel like when I really get back on track of applying to stuff, I'm like, I should probably book some time with Angela. Good thing I know her.
Yeah, this is also maybe something we should mention, that building community, we are in a super beneficial position ourselves, because like we built our community tremendously just because of all the people we got connected with. The ones we interview in a podcast is only a small bit of all the connections we had. And either it's like just meet and greet, or like we're writing emails. But like we want all of you to get connected with each other, also maybe with some of the guests, but if it's not guests, just to know that you can. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys would be talking to each other. They're like reading messages on Instagram. I can see that people react to the same stuff, have similar struggles, look for connection in the same area. We're like brainstorming how to make it happen and make it attractive and make it something fun and more interactive than just writing emails.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think that if we have a bigger team in the coming year, I want, even a more formalized mentorship opportunity to grow out of it. The other thing we really wanted to mention in this vein of like building community is that Lindsay has started UnifID, and that is a really fantastic community that has a Discord chat currently. And so sometimes when we've talked about how we can create a community like that, I think that she's a really good example of somebody who's doing it well, and want to encourage people to go there in the meantime, because it exists and it's wonderful.
Super great that she was recognized at IDC with an award for building community and fostering connections. And I loved that she went up on stage and said, like, everyone says design's a really small world and that like everybody knows everybody, but starting UnifID, you can see that there's a lot more people to know, and there's a lot more people to get connected with that aren't really the main event at like a conference. But hopefully we're changing that, right? Where some of those people get the stage, they get to say, their perspective on design, and society and change making. So credit to IDSA too, that I felt like the talks this year were really challenging norms more than before. I was excited by that.
That's cool. I was going to ask, yeah, did you felt like that was represented well at the conference? Like it
Yeah,
was already a bit of a shift?
I do feel like there was a shift. And some of that really conscious effort is so important because I felt like all of those things, they're not just these token like viewpoints that you nod to. They are things that you can work into your worldview and work into your work as a designer. Like you can become a better designer by being educated in that way.
Yeah. Well, I think it's consistent with the fact that IDSA has been, like they've been really pushing for the WID chapters to grow. We have the new one in New York, which is so cool. And it seems like they are kind of putting their money where their mouth is a little bit to get behind like a more consistent, broad effort to promote like minority professionals in the space, which is really cool. There was a question that I'm actually sort of curious to ask you guys too, but it was, what have been some of your biggest challenges this year and what helped? We had a pretty like active person that replied to several, and she said, like small changes make big impacts and improvements. So just incremental small work and like repetition, it seems like, which I thought was cool. But yeah, can I turn that question for fun on to you two? What was like a hurdle professionally or I guess personally this year?
Definitely because of all the layoffs and other changes that happened in like many companies in the beginning of the year. I had to, I kept my job, but had to pivot because of the projects getting canceled to completely new area of product. And it was a big shift, and the amount of stuff I had to learn just because just about different category that like was always somewhere next to me, but like start working on like even different shapes. Sure, it's different products, but like even the 3D modeling suddenly became so difficult. I don't know what really helped me. I think like hanging out with more coworkers and like really getting to know ins and outs, why certain projects were done certain way, which I was always curious, but now I kind of had to have a crash course of understanding every decision. Asking questions and not being embarrassed that I don't know something.
Totally.
Especially that what I discovered was sometimes I was asking questions and people were like, well, actually, we don't know. We do it always that way. And yeah, that's like engineering question. Like we never thought about it. And I'm like, okay, it's not because like I didn't work on it. Just I don't have to feel bad about myself that I didn't know something or like Google it in secrecy.
Yeah.
So just going and asking, this is a huge help whenever something new is happening and you need to get up to speed.
I think I'm so happy actually that you mentioned that because yeah, our three lives are a little bit behind the scenes for sure in this podcast, but Ginger and I can attest to how crazy the process was for you when you were going through the possibility of losing your job and the fact that it is connected to your capacity to work here. What a huge amount of instability that you've navigated and like managed to seem like still pretty like on top of your professional life. So congrats. And
yeah. I remember my sister was visiting me back then, and the night before the layoffs were announced, we were hanging out together, like drinking wine, and we were brainstorming backup plans. So what we established that I will move back to Poland and start a raccoon farm, because like raccoons in Europe are sometimes pets. So the plan quickly was to catch some in US and just buy the trash cans and migrate them back to Poland. And the next day when I found out that I kept my job, my sister said she's so glad because she wanted to go for a trip, not hunt for the raccoons for the remaining week.
You looked at those raccoons outside and you said, you're safe for now.
Yes.
I don't think you'd have to hunt that hard. You just like walk through the U district for about 5 minutes and they would
just bring some food.
Yeah, they would just climb right into your car. Oh God. That's funny. Good backup plan, honestly. That'll be there for any of us if we ever need it.
Yeah, it's a business plan.
Exquisite American raccoons.
They're extra scary and diseased.
Oh God.
Good luck. What about you, Ginger?
I I feel like this past year has been full of a lot of changes. I think that like every workplace is talking about that, right? Where there's a lot of transitioning maybe back into the office, and it's something where the past couple years everyone got used to one way of doing things, like working mostly at home.
Mhm.
And even though we're kind of going back to something that should be familiar, it's still not quite the same as it was. And so it is still its own new thing. And I've got to say that in a lot of ways, it made me feel busier than ever. Like when the pandemic first locked us down, I remember telling my boss, like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything all day, but I'm also so busy. And it was this weird, maybe like disorganization of trying to like get all your shit together and still keep things afloat while everything is a disaster. Because also at that time, it was like all the supply chain mess. And so everything was just putting a fire out instead of how we should be doing design, which is like getting to sit down and think about stuff and just breathe. And I feel like I'd gone back to that point a little bit of like, what am I doing all day? And yet I'm so busy.
Yeah.
That's still kind of like a status. And what I found has helped with it is just kind of being honest about like, yeah, that's a disaster right now. And we're not going to fix it overnight. Like that whole small changes with big impacts or improvements, that's so real. Some of these problems that are kind of big, overarching process related, there's no snapping your fingers and magic fix for it. You just kind of have to like every day fix it a little bit. Maybe it's an experiment, like you have to try something, and then if it didn't work, you try again something else, and telling everyone like where you're at so that they can also be upfront about where they're at. And I think that that's been really helpful too, is this idea that it's not you. Everyone's kind of feeling some of this adjustment, and then also everyone being like, "Yeah, we're gonna adjust." I'm lucky. My team's been cool instead of being like, "No, it's super rigid." And also luckily, like not having a company that's tracking your badging in at whatever
Yeah.
time and crazy stuff like that.
God.
But there's still an adjustment period, and I don't really know how long it's gonna take to how we get stuff done.
I've been in office for a year already regularly. And I think like recently, a few times there was a week that I was at office 5 days a week and I felt so tired. It's like,
Yeah,
how did
that's
we
so
live
draining.
like
Yeah.
that before?
Maybe the silliest, I hope designers at least understand this comment, but like just the fluorescent lights, man, I can't deal with like
Yeah, that
office
could be a big part
lighting
of
for
it.
that many hours a week anymore. Yeah. And commuting, and of course just yeah,
Fuck commuting.
splitting your day. I know. I didn't really mind my commute that much, but definitely substantial. I like bought a car for that job, you know.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah.
I wish I
Yeah.
could sell my car. Just get rid of it.
You can't? Seems
I
like
can't I
you
can't
could do
transit
that.
to Everett. No, I cannot.
Okay, fair enough. You
It's
live far
impossible.
out. Yeah.
I still don't have a car, but
Good for you.
I am thinking about buying, but it's just too much to research.
It's not worth it.
No, it's not research. It's parking in Queen Anne in
Yeah.
Seattle. Seattle
Yeah.
listeners know what I'm talking about. Street parking on a hill, parallel.
I get so many Ballard tickets. It's ridiculous. It's just it's my parking fee.
Oh no.
It's so hard to avoid. It's just that there's yeah, I don't need to complain about that right now. But lots of tickets over here. I think for me on that question, it was just like knowing that I kind of like eventually just unsticking this like choice that I knew that I needed to make to leave my company. And finally getting the like momentum to actually follow through on that feeling. Yeah, it's just scary. It's like having a safe, stable job feels good. And it was reasonably okay. But I ultimately know that it's not the field that I want to stay in. And I think for anybody that's like trying to make a decision about staying or going, you know, an important thing for me was just that there was nowhere else to grow or go. I had kind of done all of our products at least once. And as I tried to like switch into new categories or sort of like find new avenues to move, it became obvious that that really was like not where my company wanted the position to go, that they just like needed it to stay as sort of like the consistent thing that it was, which is fair. I mean, they, you know, that's how they function. So it was indicative to me that it really wasn't like negotiable that I could be there or not. I was like, I don't want to just keep designing the same thing in the same way. I won't be becoming like a better designer, and I certainly will just have like creative burnout, which I think was happening already.
Yeah, I know. You can tell us right now when you had some time off. Are you in the phase of redoing portfolio?
No.
Which is not yet, not there yet. So like sitting and brainstorming with 10 different approaches. How do you want to do that?
God, can we have an expert in portfolio building on the show? Because I want to talk to her. This would actually be a wonderful thing to like get our listeners to like talk to us about in the comments. Just what is this portfolio process we have to do? Why is it so huge? Why is it like everybody just is so overwhelmed by it? And they can be beautiful. And I think that they can be really good storytelling and really like capture a person well. But man, I have yet to meet somebody that is like excited to work on theirs.
I think great advice came from Brittany because she said something like, oh, just have on your phone a few pictures of the thing you're working on or the thing you're proud of you did. And I was like, yeah, a portfolio website. But then I felt like, no, actually, if there is like a few things that you have a lot to tell about, keep those photos on your phone and you basically do the storytelling yourself. Maybe you don't have to have like a polished PDF hanging somewhere. I mean, obviously, if you apply for a job, it's a different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like people just like stressed too much about it. And no one gets hired just of the pristine website, I feel like.
I agree that it's overly stressful for what actually comes out of it, but I don't think you can skip it. Like there is so much weight on it to be just so. And my other main thing that I've been feeling about it and have felt in the past is just like, have you guys seen examples of portfolios that just really show like all of the categories in which a person is creative? Because of course, like other true industrial designers, I have plenty of professional projects where I followed a very particular process and did a thing. But when I think about like who I am as like a person who makes things or problem solves, those work projects are just like such a tiny fraction of the way that I put out my creativity into my community or world or like profession, you know? And I think if I'm gonna spend the time on a website to like have people know me and think that I would be worth hiring for their projects, that feels like such a big gap. How do I show you this whole like rounded person, you know?
That's what I was thinking was part of the issue with portfolio is not only that does it feel like it has to be perfect, such that, you know, someone could hire you off of it, but it feels like it has to be illustrative of who you are. And sometimes that can be kind of at odds with the professional persona of a designer. So like if some of the art that you do is like maybe like extremely craft based or something that like somehow that's not designy enough. So then you have to choose between like showing less of yourself or showing something that's not perfect, but more real and authentic. And I think that everyone gets to like a question of like, what is the best balance? Or maybe first step, like, is this good enough? Is it perfect enough? And then, is this me? And then if you are kind of discovering that your work isn't you, I think that that can cause some like identity crisis, at least mild, but maybe serious. And then it's just highly unpleasant to be working on this. And then of course, like, oh, but like my ability to feed myself and pay my rent is like riding on this stupid website. So
I think that you're right about the disconnect. Like, yeah, I left my company because baseball is not me, but that's the professional work mostly that I have to showcase, you know? And I think like also I have like taught myself how to sew and made a lot of complex things. Like that's way more relevant to going and being a soft goods designer, but there's no way to show like that craft really, you know, or like that self-teaching or like the understanding of manipulating that material because it's sort of irrelevant. Anyway, it's a topic that I'm sure any designer has thoughts about.
definitely. I think it's hard too that like we are very harsh critics of ourselves. So you have to show this work to someone else to get an outside view of like, is this good? Is this how it should be communicated? And do you understand it? But then, of course, you have that crisis of like, I don't know if I'm ready to show this. And then you have to sort of like overcome that hurdle already.
Yeah, maybe one of the events we should set up is a really non-judgmental portfolio review. Like, hey, why don't you come to this portfolio review with like anything about your storytelling that you think could stick on the wall, and we can help each other craft like what is interesting instead of just what is a sexy sketch or like what is, I would love to be part of something like that.
Yeah. And I think it would require us all to sort of understand the person behind the website a little more, which maybe will be confidence building and gratifying. I feel like that might make us better at evaluating portfolios. As like I have to do that a lot for my job. I look at a lot of portfolios. And I always wonder like, am I really evaluating this correctly?
Yeah, well, okay, it's interesting. One of my questions that I wanted to ask you was about kind of about this, but like in that vein, you're picking students that are newer to the design industry, especially, right? Like you're helping select a lot of internships. Like, how do you trust your own judgment about the decisions you make when also aware that the decision you make really elevates a student's like potential?
Oh man.
Let me make you sweat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reality, for one thing, I feel like there's just not enough internships out there for how many wonderful, extremely qualified students there are, which maybe then makes you feel worse of like, do I really pick this person over that person? Or you just kind of have to detach yourself from like, I can't make 5 more internships appear at my company, and I can't make all these other companies make internships. I don't have that kind of control. I can only control this one thing, and it's one position. So, and it's better than 0. So I think I kind of go with that as like, I think it's doing more good than harm. You take wins where you can get them. And then as for like, if I pick this student over that student, like, is it okay? Or is something wrong? I try to think, well, it's 2 ways, like the student that you serve and elevate, like you said, and that they will learn something from the internship and gain professional skills. And then for the company to get an intern that creates some work that is useful to us, that is inspiring, that we can like use somehow in the future, that we have some benefit. So I think that it's rare that we would take an intern based on like the selection process. Like everyone that sort of makes it to maybe not even like an interview point, but just like a short list of portfolios. Like my cutoff is saying like all of these people seem based on portfolio alone, like they could be successful in an internship and they could create valuable assets. They could, add to the team dynamic. They could excite us. They could inspire us. Like that's kind of already met. That is what I would say. And then that they too would go to an internship and learn a lot, and that it would be useful to them even if they don't like this industry or obviously decide to go work somewhere else, or like that whatever they get out of it they'll take back to their school and program and it will be informative. I see it all as just meeting thresholds, and then the amount of like extra of like how good, that's just sort of the cream on top. I try not to think of it as the most optimized because all of that becomes guesswork. Like, is this really the best candidate over this one? And trying to like min max your way through like an internship program, I would be up at night too much, and I would be like worried. And you have no way of knowing because you can't go back and be like, oh, we're going to go in my time machine and take the other intern instead. I will never know. So we just have to say, hey, this is the person we're going with, and we think it's a good fit, and then turn their internship into the best internship we can offer them at the time.
Cool. Yeah.
Maybe I should shoot a ginger with my question right now, which is maybe a little bit similar. How do you keep yourself so well educated? I'm always impressed how many things you're aware of and about how many things you heard.
I love this question because it means I have fooled you.
No.
Are you fake it till you make it?
I mean, I do feel like a really like wordy, verbose person that has to go to everyone that I can and just talk about anything all the time.
Hey, good thing you have a podcast.
Yeah, that's why we were in a podcast. I forced you to talk with me. That's my brilliant plan. I mean, I do think I spend a lot of time like chronically online, just reading things, both for my benefit and maybe also because I'm a millennial that's like, I've decided that I can go online and get mad at things. And that I'm like addicted to that feeling or something. I'm not sure, but a lot of it is just like consuming media of some form. Usually it's reading. Still, I'm not quite young enough to like love the short 30-second to minute long videos. I don't find those informative. I get really mad if I have to listen to something with sound on. I want to read it. But probably just constantly reading and learning something through various outlets. Much to my chagrin, I read a lot of LinkedIn nowadays. I spend a lot of time like critiquing what I read on LinkedIn. I try not to take it too seriously, in that sometimes I think it's like super bullshit as far as like a social media and a place for news coincides, but it's where a lot of professional stuff happens. Sorry, LinkedIn people and anyone who really likes it, but I hate it. And I then take everything that like goes into my head and try to disseminate it and discuss it with people like you guys. But I spend a lot of time discussing things with Brian and my coworkers. And I think that that process of like me regurgitating something is a way of like digesting what I learned and read and maybe like having a deeper understanding of it, and then having people comment and soundboard so that we can sort of like tear something apart. Like, is this really correct, or is there maybe something missing? And that already again adds to that knowledge. So I don't know if that's the secret sauce, or maybe it's me that's full of hot air, but I think that's what I'm doing.
That's a method. Yeah.
Method to the madness.
Yeah.
Why did you all have so many questions for me? I feel self-conscious.
No, it's awesome. Well, I think when we were planning the episode, right, we had this idea to each come with a question for each other, because we rarely get the experience on the podcast of ever being the people that don't know what's going to happen, right? Like we write the questions, we're prepared to have the conversation. And so you just experienced what our guests experience of
That's true.
of needing to answer things you didn't know were coming. Luckily, you get to turn it around on us. So
I did want to turn it around. I kind of had a question for you, Kate, related to your sort of your portfolio woes in about your like, not, you don't have to talk about portfolio though. I just want to talk about these other like interests you have and creative outlets, because you have a lot of them. And we've talked already at some length about ceramics, and like maybe just tell me a little more, wax poetic, about like what you love about ceramics, because I miss it. I haven't done ceramics in a while. And maybe tell me what you're working on right now.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I like any hobby where I get to make things. And I think that, yeah, pottery, like ceramics, is just a really, really pure, like, form exploration only, right? So there's a lot of space on the wheel to, like, just experiment and play with, like, all of these little tiny variations. I really like how meditative it is to, like, get in the flow state of sort of, yeah, I've been doing it for years. So, like, knowing that I have good control of the clay, and that I can sort of like mentally check out a little bit, or just sort of see what forms I make, is really satisfying. I think that my like thing I've been trying to improve on this year is just a lot of like lidded objects and making them have really good fit and really good like lineup. So I've been making a lot of teapots, and still never to the standard of your like incredible
I would love to
making
have a
techniques.
Kate's teapot.
Okay, I need to get my pour really clean. I need to get it to flow well, so we'll see.
Just think of me as your guinea pig.
Yeah, teapots, jars, and like repetition. So trying to make sets of things that are consistent are definitely like the things that are still in my goals, I guess. And then fun side is like just really pure form exploration. I like do all these bud vases for my sister because she's a flower farmer and she sells them at the farmer's market with her flowers. And so that is fun because every single vase is just like a completely wacky different form from the one before it. And it's like a cool, very freeform way to get on and just make lumpy stuff, wobbly stuff. It's nice.
You should show more of your bud vases. I want to see more lumpy, wobbly flowers.
Sure. I can do that. Yeah. So that's pottery. I think it's probably one of the earlier things that is adjacent to like a design world that I got into. Maybe just like, yeah, having an opinion on form came from starting to do pottery when I was pretty young.
Oh, cool. It was maybe a gateway. Pottery is a gateway drug to design.
It's really funny how trendy it's gotten. Like I love it deeply, and so I get it, but it feels like everybody does it now.
It's like obligatory hobby for designers.
Or Seattleites, or just like hipsters.
I thought the obligatory hobby for designers was rock climbing.
Oh God,
No,
don't say that.
It's in Seattle. Like in SF, like in Seattle, everyone does ceramic, but in SF even more.
Really?
That's so funny.
I
wonder why. For all their succulents down in San Francisco.
Probably.
I want more people to be into sewing. It's so connected to design to me, and it's so fun.
hard. I like sewing too, but it's so hard.
It is hard. Uh-huh. I've been getting really into making my like white whale for sewing right now is making bras. I'm determined to figure out how to make bras.
I saw that dress you made
Oh my gosh, for the
and that
wedding.
the top is so fitted. I was
Thanks.
blown away.
Thanks.
Yes, me too. Me too. It was amazing.
Thanks. That's so sweet.
I have been reading a lot about bra fitting, which I feel like we can discuss here. Like it's an interesting design topic.
Yeah.
Bra fitting is like not good, maybe specifically in the US, but in general, like basically almost everyone is that wears a bra is wearing like the wrong size.
Oh yeah.
I was
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit. And that like, people talk about bra sizes as just the cup like letter, but that's not really a relevant size. You have to combine it with the band size because the band size dictates the cup volume to some degree. Like it's a
Totally.
ratio.
Yeah. Well, and from starting to do research, I really have been digging deep on bra making like forums and stuff. There's actually also so many shapes of if you want an underwire bra, there's so many different like heights and shapes of the scooped underwire that you can build around. So like one of the coolest things I think about sewing is that you're making something so specifically for your body if you're making your own clothes. And so like sizes or just like perception of body image stuff like kind of all fades away because you realize that you're actually just like creating something that fits a shape and it's not super relevant. But when it comes to bra making, I think especially there's so many variables like the width between the cups, like sort of the space between, and like all of the heights and all of these different increments that you realize are like you can just make them actually be exactly what they need to be, which is impossible like from the average manufacturer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
One, it's kind of freeing, right? Like you said, that the size isn't really a thing. You're just making it to the dimensions it needs to be. So it doesn't have to be a 32B or whatever. Like it's just for you. It doesn't, those things aren't relevant, which are often what we have the hang up with.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of hang up. And I mean, I guess, yeah, you still look at pattern sizing to figure out which one you should like select. But I think even in that, you start to realize that like you're picking and choosing all of these different pieces. Like, let's just say you were an 8 and you kind of like look at the dimensions that is a size 8 in all these different categories, like hip and bust and waist and stuff. It's just not even like you don't even use it. You use it as a guide and then you like go in or out for all these different areas as you would need to fit your actual body. And so it's just quite cool to break down that that doesn't really mean anything. And I find that to be really like a cool part of making your own stuff in general. Yeah.
I want to see this in your portfolio.
There's a Seattle company that makes underwear that's like non-binary that I have always thought is really cool. I wonder if that would be like fun to talk to them.
Tomboy X?
Might be. Yeah, I'm just blanking. Do you think are they here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really underwire stuff though. More all
Sure.
soft, like kind of sort of sporty, loungy.
Yeah. Well, because I think that the same thing I'm saying about size starts to become true about like gender and like clothing representation as you think about making your clothes there too. It's just so weird actually that we've like thrown all of these like meanings onto fabric.
I'm gonna throw this out there as like a Hail Mary. This sounds like Kate's PhD, just saying.
I care about it a lot, clearly. Okay, Margaret, what is your favorite color?
Oh,
I have a real question for you too.
Okay.
But you have to
no,
answer that.
no. White.
White. Oh my gosh, isn't that what Jackie said?
No, Jackie
Purist.
said orange.
Oh, wait, really? My memory is
Yeah.
horrible. Why is it white?
Because it's pure and there is like so many colors in the world existing in nature, but not only in nature, but like in city, at home, everywhere, that I like to add like a blank canvas. And I like seeing white. I love snow. I love to see the whole world turning white with snow, and then you suddenly can see shapes and proportions, and everything looks differently just because you get the same color and you look at the different factors of how everything looks.
That's lovely. Man, every time we ask somebody that, it actually is more sweet and meaningful than I anticipate. But I have another question for you, which is just like something I love and respect about you is that you are like opinionated and you believe in your feelings about stuff and you're direct. It's so cool. I just wanted to know, like, what is the first time you have a memory of sharing a strong opinion, either when you were younger or as a professional, and just like really seeing it come into action and like getting positive feedback for this trait you have?
Definitely in school, I was rather quiet. And like my first jobs, I also kept to be quiet.
That's interesting.
Yeah, my first memory of sharing a strong opinion.
About design, you know.
Yeah, I know, it doesn't need to be about design. I know, like convincing my parents to have a dog. It might have been that one, something I was very motivated.
Did it work?
Yeah, I got a dog.
Nice. You said you wanted to be an architect as like your job when you were little, but I feel like also you would make a really good lawyer.
Would I? Oh, that would be great. I never considered myself wanting to be a lawyer, but what I would really like to be is like a police detective.
Oh, I can see that. Well, I've asked both of you my questions.
I have a very self-serving question for Margaret. I've always wanted to talk to Margaret more about this because she's the only one of us that's car free, which we discussed a little bit earlier. I very much admire that lifestyle, as I've kind of denoted several times. And I wanted you to tell us a little more about the like highs and lows of car free life, or maybe like, can we convince people to do that? Like, how would you convince someone to do it?
It's for sure hard if someone grew up in US because like my parents, both parents had cars and like we didn't live in a city center. So there was always driving. But being in college, like I didn't need a car. I wouldn't probably afford paying for it. And then when I moved to work in Amsterdam, not having a car was basically perfect. And hardly anyone was using cars there because like there are canals everywhere and everywhere. Everyone is biking. Coming to US, it was more of me being super afraid of highways. Like first time I got into I-5, I like just couldn't cross Seattle because there are like exits everywhere. I-5 in Seattle, if you're just changing lane, you get to the most left one and think I'm safe from the next three exits, and then you end up on the exit lane on the left. I got so traumatized of it. I was like, no, I'm not driving in US. Now I'm proficient. Like I drove through New York. I'm okay. But while being afraid of driving through America, I kind of got used to not having a car. But I do have driving license, so and I'm a good driver. So it's not that I don't know how to do it. I grew up with public transport, and it's not working great. In Seattle, it's not that bad. So I would say the advice is when you rent apartment, just make sure you have a connection to the work and you have all the other things close to you.
Yeah.
I do groceries with my dog when we walk.
Just schlepping everything.
You did pick a serious hill to live on. Like it's steep there.
Everyone lives on a hill in Seattle.
I don't currently.
I mean, like my immediate thing around me is flat, and then if I go like a couple blocks, there's a hill.
Yeah, it's fair. I miss like in New York, we would basically like live half of our time with a car and half of it without. Like every time that my parents got too exasperated with one option or the other, we would like, oh, we can't possibly like deal with this anymore. We have to have a car. And then we'd be like, we can't possibly deal with this anymore. We can't have a car. Get rid of it. So
interesting.
Yeah. But parking in the city is not worth it. I think that where you live, Margaret, like I totally understand. When you were like worried about losing your job, was also part of it like finding a new one that you could get to easily? Because Seattle has so much work that's in the suburbs.
No, when I was like afraid about layoffs, if I would have to get a car to drive to the job on the outskirts, wasn't my worry at all. I was just in the panic mode. Yeah, I was probably more seriously thinking about raccoons than like actual actions I would take if I had to deal with like losing job and visa.
Oh God, it's not funny, but the raccoons is funny. Oh man.
Yeah, my question to you, Kate, is unfortunately similar to Ginger's, but I wanted to ask you if you ever wanted to be a fashion designer because you have great style.
Yes,
you have great style. You always wear very well matched things, and the things that I admire on you, I would probably not think about putting them on myself. And also, yeah, you make your stuff, and you have always different jewelry, always very pronounced. And I was thinking that sometimes that you look like a CMF person because like these industrial designers is like black jeans, black t-shirt often. Like, I don't know, look at Ginger. And you always look to me like a CMF person or like a fashion designer.
Wow, I'm super flattered. Thank you. Ginger's wearing brown, I'll have you know, not black.
It's like the one brown thing I have. I bought it by mistake.
I thought it was black.
I thought it was gray. It was labeled like it was going to be gray. It didn't have a picture, so I bought it. And now I pay the consequences by having to wear it once in a while.
So funny. Gosh, I'm actually so happy that you asked me that though, Margaret, because that is a job I wanted that I was younger that feels like it's relevant to design. I like watched America's Next Top Model like lots of people did. And like, sure, maybe I also like tried to figure out how to like take pictures of myself or something stupid. But I really, really thought fashion was cool. And I thought there was like even a little part of me, maybe when I was applying to colleges, that like I didn't know how to do something creative that felt like I could make a whole career out of it. But that was the only one that I thought of that was like, maybe. I was like, this would be cool. I don't really feel like I have the follow through to do that job, but like it was really appealing to me. Yeah. Huh. I forgot about that. Thanks.
Memory unlocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, go sit, make that portfolio.
It is. I have realized that it's like funny to come full circle on that type of thinking though. Like to have been like, oh no, I've gone off in a way different direction and then basically just like wiggle my way through industrial design, like back to the same to the same place.
I do think that's kind of a credit to this profession because it touches so much. Like so many things are designed, everything's a product. So and the skills can be really universal. So if you want to, you can apply it to something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
There's not very many things that you can't use it on.
Yeah, that's true.
Orf.
She lies next to me, like next to the mic.
She wants to be the guest.
Yeah, she wants to go for a walk because we only went briefly before.
Oh, we should let you do that soon.
Okay. Well, thanks again for listening to Beyond Ray. We're so happy to celebrate our 1-year anniversary with all our listeners. And again, thank you for all of the feedback and all of the words of encouragement over the past year that let us know that the episodes are having an impact, that they're helping, and that you're learning things. And we're so excited to provide more of that. You can continue to find us at our lovely website, beyondraypodcast.com. And keep an eye on our Instagram, WID_Seattle. And we've got some exciting guests coming up through the end of the year. Keep in touch, everyone.
Yeah, tune back in if you want to hear us talk about worms, because that's coming in hot.
Yeah, that's a sustainability thing too. Someone was asking for it.
Oh yeah,
it's coming September.
You wanted sustainability? Well, we talk about worms, so
in the closet. Worms in the closet.
Oh, you guys are the best. It's been such a fun year working together.
It's so good.
We discussed all the possibilities how worms can escape and get into your shoes.
Which is zero chance that they escape and go in your shoes.
I'm still not convinced.
Never. I agree.
Listen to September episode and make your own mind about that.